When looking at domestic hunger in the United States versus hunger globally, a lot of times people will ask the question, aren't all hungry people the same? And the answer to that is not exactly. When we look at the definitions of hunger given by the U.S. Department of Agriculture versus definition of hunger given by organizations such as the WFP and other international agencies, you see quite different discrepancies in how those entities look at hunger, define hunger, even the language and linguistics that are used to talk about the hungry poor are quite different. We're going to look at that throughout the course of this lecture. When we look at food insecurity versus hunger versus malnutrition, those are terms that typically get used fairly interchangeably, but as we've tried to show you over the course of the last several lectures, they mean quite different things, and we want you as we go through these lectures to keep those differences in mind. When we look at hunger, the base definition of hunger is essentially the uneasy or painful sensation caused by a lack of food. But recently, the U.S. government has showed an extreme aversion to actually even using the term hunger. A lot of people feel that this term is politically charged, so if your state gets deemed a hungry state, politicians of that state aren't very excited about the federal government using that word, and so there's been a lot of pull and push about what words can actually be used to talk about the hungry poor. In the U.S., we tend to, people tend to be more comfortable when we talk about food insecurity instead of actually using the word hungry. Nationally, we define food insecurity as the availability of less than 2,100 calories per day per person. When we think about that in terms of larger populations and globally, food insecurity actually consumes large portions of international populations, and this chart is a really great chart to show you that. You see in this first category that 61% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa are food insecure. As we walk down the chart, that goes from 61% in sub-Saharan Africa, 41% in Latin America and the Caribbean, 22% in Asia, 20% in the Commonwealth of Independent States, and then 2% in North Africa. And that is when we look at food insecurity. When we look at this by population, we see that Asia actually has the most hungry people. And the population for the 70 countries that make up this chart exceeds 3 billion people. So I want you guys to keep these two images in your mind as we walk through the lecture, and then also keep in mind that when we talk about the people that exist in these populations, they are quite different and defined quite differently than the people that we're going to talk about in the United States in relation to food insecurity.